If you use almost any modern AI product today, there is a good chance that Demis Hassabis is somewhere in the background of that story. He co-founded DeepMind, the company behind AlphaGo, the system that defeated one of the greatest Go players in the world. He later led Google's push into Gemini, and in 2024, he received the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for using AI to accelerate scientific discovery. But this episode is not mainly about his resume. The more interesting question is, why did he take this particular path? Hassabis was not the kind of person who simply followed the trend at the right time. At several of the most important moments in his life, he chose the route that looked strange, risky, or even ridiculous. At 18, he turned down a check worth £500,000. He spent years making games, then left to study neuroscience, then founded a company devoted to artificial general intelligence at a time when most serious people treated that phrase like a joke. So where did that confidence come from? To understand Hassabis, we have to begin with a chessboard. When he was 11 years old, Hassabis was playing in an international chess tournament against a Danish master. The game dragged on for nearly 10 hours. By the end, the position looked hopeless. Hassabis thought he had lost, so he resigned. Then his opponent pointed back at the board. There had been a drawing move, a strange move, a move that required sacrificing the queen. It looked irrational, but it could have saved the game. For Hassabis, the painful part was not only losing, it was what he saw when he looked around the room. The hall was filled with some of the brightest young minds in Europe, all spending enormous mental energy on 64 squares. And in that moment, a question appeared in his mind. If human intelligence is this powerful, should it really be spent only on games? That question never really left him. Before that tournament, Hassabis had imagined becoming a professional chess player. After it, his attention shifted toward computers. He used prize money from chess to buy his first machine, and soon discovered that people were trying to make computers play chess. One idea struck him especially hard. Claude Shannon had argued that computer chess might not matter much by itself, but if a machine could master a complex game, it might become a route toward solving more important problems. That sentence became one of the hidden keys to Hassabis's life. Games were not just entertainment. Games were test environments for intelligence. At 15, Hassabis was accepted to Cambridge, but he was too young to enter immediately. During the waiting period, he interned at Bullfrog, one of the most famous British game studios of the time. The company was building Theme Park, a simulation game that many people from the 1980s and 1990s still remember. At Bullfrog, Hassabis saw how software could simulate crowds, choices, incentives, and behavior. A game was not just graphics and rules. It was a small artificial world. When he left, Bullfrog's founder gave him a book, Gödel, Escher, Bach. It is a strange book, part mathematics, part music, part logic, part philosophy, and part artificial intelligence. Its deeper question is how consciousness and meaning can emerge from physical systems. For a 17-year-old Hassabis, that book was electric. It made intelligence feel like something that could be studied, modeled, and maybe one day recreated. Then came the first major fork in the road. Before he entered Cambridge, Bullfrog offered him a salary of £500,000 a year. In early 1990s money, that was a life-changing offer. For an 18-year-old, it was absurd. Hassabis said no. The reason was revealing. He had watched a film about James Watson and Francis Crick discovering the structure of DNA at Cambridge. He decided that he wanted to go there, not simply to get a degree, but to become a scientist. Money could not buy him away from the idea that some problems were more worth spending a life on than others. After Cambridge, though, he did something that looked like a detour. Instead of going directly into academic AI, he returned to games. In 1999, he founded his own studio and spent years building a strategy game in which the player ruled over millions of simulated citizens. To outsiders, it may have looked like he had left AI behind, but in his own mind, two projects were running at once. One was the game on the screen, the other was the long plan: understand intelligence well enough to build it. Games gave him a laboratory. They forced him to think about agents, goals, environments, memory, planning, and behavior. And they gave him money and operating experience. Then, at 29, he made another unexpected move. He shut down the studio and went to University College London to do a PhD in neuroscience. If the goal was artificial intelligence, why study the brain? For Hassabis, the answer was simple. If you want to build general intelligence, you should study the best working example of intelligence that exists. The human brain was not a side topic, it was the central clue. By the time he founded DeepMind in 2010, he had collected 3 kinds of training that almost no one else had in the same combination: the intuition of a chess player, the systems thinking of a game designer, and the scientific discipline of a neuroscientist. That combination became DeepMind's operating system. But in 2010, calling a company an artificial general intelligence company was not fashionable. It was radioactive. AI had already been through 2 winters. In the 1970s, early optimism collapsed when systems failed to understand language and concepts outside narrow settings. Funding was cut. Confidence disappeared. In the 1980s, the field came back. Then the second winter arrived in the 1990s. This time the damage was cultural as much as financial. Researchers avoided the term artificial intelligence. Many used machine learning instead because it sounded safer. Neural networks were treated by many serious academics as a fringe belief. So when Hassabis told investors that DeepMind's mission was to build AGI, most of them did not hear ambition. They heard fantasy. About 80% walked away. Hassabis's reaction was almost calm. He later said that they only wanted true believers. The people who walked away were helping DeepMind filter out the wrong money. That sounds arrogant, but it also shows how he understood the problem. AGI was not a normal startup bet. It required investors, scientists, and operators who could tolerate uncertainty for a very long time. DeepMind began with 3 co-founders, Hassabis, Shane Legg, and Mustafa Suleyman. One wanted to build general intelligence. One wanted to define it. One was deeply concerned with its social consequences. From the beginning, DeepMind was not only asking, can we make this technology work? It was also asking, what happens if it does? The early years were difficult. Peter Thiel's fund gave DeepMind an important investment in 2011, but later financing became uncertain. At one point, money was running so low that the company was close to not being able to pay salaries. To survive, Hassabis accepted a commercial project that had very little to do with AGI, image-based fashion recommendations for an online shopping platform. During the day, researchers worked on identifying dresses. At night, they pushed forward the deeper research. From the outside, it looked like compromise. From the inside, it was survival without surrender. Eventually, new funding arrived. Then in 2014, Google bought DeepMind for about $650 million. The negotiation also revealed something important about Hassabis. He did not only negotiate price, he pushed for a commitment to AI ethics and oversight. He wanted Google to support an independent ethics board for DeepMind's work. For many founders, an acquisition is the moment when the mission becomes a story told after the deal. For Hassabis, the mission was still part of the deal itself. Then came the proof. In March 2016, in Seoul, AlphaGo played Lee Sedol, one of the greatest Go players in the world. Before the match, Lee expected to win. Many experts agreed. Go was supposed to be too large, too subtle, and too intuitive for the AI systems of that time. Then Game 2 reached move 37. AlphaGo placed a stone on the right side of the board, in a position that human commentators struggled to understand. At first, it looked like a mistake. Later analysis showed that the move was incredibly rare in human games, but it changed the direction of the match. Lee Sedol later said he had never seen a move like it. AlphaGo won the match 4-1. The point was not only that a machine had beaten a champion, the deeper point was that a learning system had found a judgment that did not come from human tradition. It had discovered something inside the space of the game that human experience had almost never explored. For Hassabis, this was the chess idea returning on a global stage. Games could be test beds for intelligence. A machine that learned in a game might one day help solve problems outside games. But success created a new pressure. After DeepMind joined Google, the expectations grew. Research was not enough. Google wanted products, speed, integration, and eventually commercial returns. Hassabis still believed in long-term scientific progress, but the industry was moving faster. The tension became sharper during the rise of large language models. Some researchers inside DeepMind saw the opportunity early. Jack Ray, one of the key researchers, pushed for DeepMind to build and release its own language model product. In his view, the technology was there. The company only needed the courage to put it in front of users. Hassabis was more cautious. DeepMind had already learned from difficult product experiences in medical AI. Real-world deployment was messier than a research demo. A premature launch could damage trust that had taken years to build. Both sides had a point. Ray believed the window of opportunity would not wait. Hassabis believed DeepMind's advantage was not speed alone, but accuracy, depth, and responsibility. Eventually Ray left for OpenAI, along with several engineers. Then, in November 2022, OpenAI released ChatGPT. Within about 100 days, it reached 100 million users. The industry changed almost overnight. Google went into emergency mode. Google Brain and DeepMind were combined to build Gemini and compete directly with OpenAI. Hassabis, who had spent decades defending a slower and more scientific route, was now leading a race where everyone was measuring speed. Critics said he had missed the language model wave. Others argued that his neuroscience-inspired path had become a detour. His answer was not a public argument. It was another scientific result. AlphaFold. Protein folding had challenged scientists for more than 50 years. Proteins are the machinery of life, and their function depends on their three-dimensional structure. But predicting that structure from the sequence of amino acids is brutally difficult. The number of possible folds is astronomical. For decades, researchers relied on experimental methods such as X-ray crystallography and cryo-electron microscopy. These methods are powerful, but expensive and slow. One protein structure could take months or years. After AlphaGo, Hassabis moved part of DeepMind's effort toward this problem. If AI could discover patterns in Go, perhaps it could discover patterns in biology. In 2020, AlphaFold 2 achieved accuracy close to experimental methods for many protein structures. Then DeepMind released predictions for more than 200 million proteins, freely available to researchers around the world. This was not just a technical milestone. It changed the working rhythm of biology. A scientist who once had to wait months for structural clues could now begin with a predicted structure in seconds. Drug discovery, disease research, and basic biology all gained a new map. In 2024, Hassabis received the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for this work, alongside John Jumper and David Baker. There is a beautiful detail from that moment. Hassabis described signing the Nobel guest book and seeing the signatures of his heroes: Einstein, Watson and Crick, Richard Feynman. The people whose stories had shaped his imagination were now in the same historical book. That, in a sense, is the full circle. The 11-year-old who wondered whether human intelligence could be used for something greater than games had spent his life building systems that used games as a ladder toward science. So what powered him? Three things seem impossible to separate. Mission gave him direction. It explains why he could turn down money, endure ridicule, and insist on AI ethics even during a massive acquisition. Curiosity gave him endurance. Chess, games, neuroscience, and biology were not random stops. They were different windows into the same question. What is intelligence? And confidence, maybe even a kind of useful arrogance, gave him the ability to keep walking when the world treated his goal as absurd. Without mission, he might have stopped at the most profitable option. Without curiosity, he might have burned out during the long detours. Without confidence, he might have believed the investors who walked away. We still do not know whether Hassabis will help build true AGI. That question remains open. But we do know this: he helped define what this AI era thinks intelligence can become. Whether the future proves him right or wrong, it will have to pass through the path he helped create.